You are listening to AccessUW, a podcast series brought to you by the University of Washington Office of the ADA Coordinator, where we highlight insightful discussions, informative interviews, and valuable insights about accessibility, equity, and inclusion, all within the realm of higher education with experts across the UW. In terms of accessibility, each podcast and a transcript are made available at the Office of the ADA Coordinator's website at www.washington.edu/ADA. Welcome to the first installation of AccessUW's podcast. My name is Toby Gallant, and I'm ecstatic to be your host today and one of the reoccurring hosts throughout the series. Before we jump in, I want to just provide a brief introduction about myself. Again, my name is Toby. I'm a recent graduate and endowed scholar of the UW Disability Studies program, former director of the AccessUW Student Disability Commission, and now a program assistant at the Office of the ADA Coordinator. I'm a white, male-presenting person in my early 20s, and I identify as a queer and neurodivergent disability justice advocate. Today, we will be providing a brief introduction on the Office of the ADA Coordinator, highlighting its functions, its importance, and its impact on the UW Tri-Campus and institution as a whole. To get us kicked off, let's meet the ADA Coordinator, Bree Callahan. Today, we have Bree here with us. So, Bree, would you mind giving listeners or readers a brief introduction about yourself and your role?
Hi, Toby. Would love to. Thank you for being here with me today. So my name is Bree Callahan, and I am the University of Washington's ADA/Section 504 coordinator, and I have the honor to work across all of our campuses and locations to support the work of ensuring accessibility and fostering inclusion for all of our campuses and community members and our people with disabilities across our programs and services.
Thank you for that introduction. Bree, would you mind expanding more on what does your job as ADA coordinator consist of? And what function does the office play in ensuring disability access and inclusion across the institution?
That's a great question. The office being an enterprise-wide or across the whole institution office, we're looking at trying to focus on leadership and coordination when we look at the whole university and trying to advance our mission at the university while including effectively disability and accessibility across all of that. So the office that I run works in partnership with a broad network of university partners, offices and programs who then provide direct support or services or outreach across many areas at the institution. So my role being higher level, I suppose, but supportive of units who do work. So it's that definition of coordination, perhaps in its true sense.
Gotcha. For clarity, in your introduction, you mentioned that you were the ADA/Section 504 coordinator. From my knowledge, the office is federally mandated through these two key pieces of legislation for disabled Americans, which protects the rights of disabled Americans. Could you touch a little bit more on these federal laws and how they inform your work or the office's work as a whole?
What a great setup, Toby. Thank you for that. Yes, so the ADA stands for Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed in 1990. Prior to that, there was another foundational civil rights legislation for people with disabilities back in 1973, which was the Rehabilitation Act, and Section 504 is a part of the Rehabilitation Act. So that was the first major regulation that came about within our country. And then the ADA joined in that work in 1990. So I have both titles because both regulations require a named individual to hold each of those. But in short, I usually just say ADA coordinator. It's easier, but that does encompass Section 504.
Thank you for that clarification. And I would love to make your job and these federal laws a little bit more tangible for folks who are listening or reading the transcript at home who doesn't have much knowledge of Section 504 or the ADA. So would you mind highlighting some projects that the office has been working on in the past few years or any current projects that can kind of highlight the scope of what the Office of the ADA Coordinator does?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just think of the areas in which this focus is on in a more tactical manner. There's our built environment. So all of our buildings, which could also include our external spaces on campus, from parking lots to pathways, and making sure our physical spaces are meeting our accessibility requirements, or going beyond when we have University of Washington specific areas we want to focus in. So there's a whole section of this work that's related to our physical access across campuses. This does also include things that aren't on maybe a primary campus, so the locations throughout the state, and all of our partnerships that we may have with various entities, either through our UW Medicine Network or other academic programs. So I've actually had the fun work and really interesting stuff where we do things at Friday Harbor Labs up in San Juan Islands, or out at some labs in Aberdeen, Washington, or part of the Packwood Forest out in Eatonville. So it really does cover all physical locations that we as a university operate in. Another category of the work would be our digital accessibility spaces. So websites, social media, online learning systems, and meeting accessibility standards and guidelines within those spaces. Now, the internet only came about in, let's say, 2000, maybe when it became more popular. So when these laws were passed in 1973 and 1990, right, the internet didn't exist. So it was solely focused on a variety of things in the physical space. But as things have evolved since 1990 and even back in 1973, the internet and digital spaces has become a really big place where we engage, where we learn, where we work. So those spaces also need to be accessible. So if we can't make those things accessible on all spaces, then we do things on an individual basis, which is what was called the accommodation process. So if you and I, Toby, want to go to a football game and we can't just get in and have everything accessible to us right off the bat, there's a process to go through to get an accommodation to attend an event on campus. In that example, football. If you and I were students and we were going to a class, there's a process for students to get unique accommodations designed for their access needs so they can attend class. Same thing if we were employees, right? So there's this category of accommodations and making sure that we are creating access on an individual basis when we aren't able to have all of our programs and services accessible to all. Those are the three main areas: digital accessibility, built environment, and then accommodations, or individualized accommodations.
So to reemphasize what you basically just said, the scope of the office is incredibly large, not only in the scope of what equality and access encompass and how these concepts are constantly evolving over time, but in the wide amount of stakeholders that the office interacts with. I think you mentioned the tri-campus, so that includes Seattle, Bothell, Tacoma, as well as the UW medical system, which is massive. That all being said, what is the importance of collaborating and interconnecting with all of these different stakeholders?
I love your questions today. They're fantastic, by the way. So kudos to you on that. Why it's important for us. So accessibility is all of us. I mean, we all at some point will likely encounter some kind of barrier throughout our lifetime. Just some brief data for you. The Center for Disease Control, or CDC, has 1 in 4 adults in the US as a person with a disability. So that means, based on who's listening today, there's a good percentage of individuals who identify currently or could identify, but aren't aware that they fit into this category of disability. So in short, it's to include all of us in this idea and building our systems and programs so we all can interact and have the same meaningful experiences that our other peers in the student example or other fans at a stadium or a volleyball game can experience. We all need to feel that we are included and that we have a place of belonging here. And so this idea of creating access for all, and that accessibility is for all, is definitely a really important key piece to this. There's also the legal requirements. So that's in addition to all these things. That's like the floor that we're working off of. But really, at our institution, how we value access and diversity and creating a good Husky experience, the accessibility is a core of that, and how we can really ensure that meaningful access and inclusion of people with disabilities across our programs and services is key. So it meets our values as an institution.
Bree, I think that was the perfect way to wrap up today's podcast. Accessibility is truly all of us. It's a collective responsibility. It will never just lie in the office of the ADA coordinator, but it entangles and requires all of us, every individual, every professor, faculty, staff member, medical provider, etc., etc. I know today's podcast was pretty short and pretty brief, but we wanted to provide you just a bird's eye view of the Office of the ADA Coordinator, and trust me, there will be much more information to come with this AccessUW series. So Bree, thank you so much for taking some time to kind of highlight your job and your office here. I'm very excited to have you back on the podcast in future episodes as actually a host instead of an interviewee. But again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Toby. Good to be here. See you all next time.